Welcome and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're watching this from, to another account-based / GTM Friday. We've been doing this now, my co-host Meg and I, for 3+ years, and welcoming special guests. We've got another special guest and very appropriate last name today as well. Joining us from Massachusetts, Allison Snow. You may know Allison as a former Forrester analyst, and she's got a storied CMO and demand background. Meg will give a proper introduction in a moment. Super excited to welcome Allison here. Just to refresh everybody's memory, if you have any specific questions, this is your opportunity that you can drop below. We're going to be talking about AI and GTM and alignment today, and why you want to have alignment before AI, and just talk about those factors and why it's so important to scale. But if you have specific questions, you can drop them down in the chat. Of course, if you have specific questions that for either Meg or I on our 300+ YouTube videos that we've had with guests like Allison, feel free offline to ask us as well. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Meg to give a proper introduction to Allison.
All right. Thanks, John. And Allison, we're delighted you've joined us today. Hopefully you're digging out from all the crazy snow in Massachusetts. We are very excited about your alignment topic today, but I'm particularly excited to hear your thoughts on it because you've been on the forefront of understanding what B2B companies need to do to be aligned successfully, to make the most of the combination of people, process, and technology for a while now. Catch us up on a little bit about your background and a little bit about what you're looking at and how you're helping out today.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here with you too this Friday. Thank you so much for having me. I am in the Boston area, as you mentioned. I'm watching everybody's space savers get taken away because they do that after 48 hours after a storm. So there's a lot of upset folks on the neighborhood Facebook page. So that's been pretty fun. But we were very snowed in for a while. But here I am. I've been here my whole life, and I've been in B2B marketing just about forever. So in most recent past, I did take some time off after leading a few organizations in marketing at director VP levels. I won't say I took it off. I went behind the scenes a little bit as a Forrester analyst for 4 years, 2016 to 2020, which was a really interesting 4 years, I think. Everything was since, right? But for things like the rise of predictive analytics to intent data to ABM, becoming just increased, people like you, Megan, really kind of helping the world understand what it was, people like both of you. And since then, I left Forrester around 2020. I've been, I really wanted in my career to go broad more than deep in some cases. So I've served as a VP at the customer marketing level, product marketing level, and the demand gen level, and turned that into a CMO gig about 2 years ago. And since having left that role, I've been doing some consulting, which I actually had active for about 3 years on the side, about 10 hours a month for folks while I worked full time. Now I'm doing that a little bit more in a company called Celicia. And that is really fabulous. I feel like it's a little bit back to my analyst days, keeps me active and involved. I miss seeing kind of the full arc of some things. Go-to-market has kind of this full arc, but I really do like also being, feels like really useful in moments when it really counts, when folks are kind of ready to call. John, I know you know that's like in Meg too, when folks are ready to kind of say, gosh, we're over our heads here a little bit and need some help, and that always feels good too. So it's been real fun. That's what I've been up to. I have a Substack called The Alignment Dividend that I'm excited about. I spend a good amount of time on that, just kind of talking about the things I observe and trying to translate them for a broader audience than my own client base.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Allison. And I think it's exciting that you're, continuing to share your point of view and the experiences of others that you see in terms of what's working and what isn't. It feels like we've been talking about alignment for a really long time. And yet it remains really hard. And I continue to see it come up in research studies that ask, what are your biggest challenges, whether it's for account-based marketing or deployment of AI or just general, getting sales and marketing and other functions to work effectively together. Alignment remains one of the hardest things in B2B. But not for, I think there's sort of two sides to it. And this is one of the things that caught my attention when you started talking about alignment debt, Allison, and I was excited for you to share it. tell us a little bit about what alignment debt is for those who aren't familiar with the concept. And also talk a little bit about maybe why it's different on the buyer side versus the seller side.
Totally. Thanks for the question. So alignment debt to me, and everyone's kind of familiar with technical debt, so we get that. I'm looking to my books here. Ben Horowitz, who wrote The Hard Thing About Hard Things, talks about management debt in that book, just having, when you tolerate bad management for too long, or a bad manager, an internal function, it creates operational drag. For me, alignment debt is that operational drag when teams are not working toward the same North Star. They're fulfilling their own kind of local interests because they're incented to do so, not because they're evil people, because the organization is structured that way, because everybody knows what they're doing and how to get a good mark on their performance review. So we haven't prioritized necessarily as organizations what an effective GTM looks like. We prioritize sales, and that makes a whole lot of sense. From an executive point of view, right? We like to see that revenue, but we don't necessarily encourage other departments to really rally around what keeps a business in business, which is the checks that we cash from customers. And so we're serving ultimately a lot of interests and a lot of goals that don't align. And that rubber meets the road in some very, very important ways. You mentioned earlier, Megan, one of our conversations, macro ways and micro ways. We can talk a little bit about that. But essentially, when we have alignment debt, one thing that I hear from customers a lot in one way or another, this isn't an exact quote from anyone, but they'll say, we can't seem to get out of our own way. And to me, that is the reflection of, we know what we're doing. I know how to do product marketing. I know how to build a product roadmap. I know how to, develop and capture and synthesize customer insights. But as a group, we don't always know what to do with that. We just don't. So I think buyers really read this as risk, and buyers read this as friction. I'll talk about some ways where that kind of shows with buyers if folks are interested and you decide to take it in that direction. But I think this is in such contrast. I think one of the reasons we're still talking about it today is we've moved a little bit over time from sales and marketing alignment, which, by the way, it's not that we solved it. It's just that it's a topic we recall talking about. While it's not solved, we added to it and said, customer success and customer experience is also a really important part of this equation. Product is an enormous part of the equation at this point, right? Especially when you think about a SaaS company and the way we recognize revenue in companies like that. So the go-to-market function is bigger, I think, than how we interpreted it about a decade ago. It's more inclusive of other functions. So all the hard work that we had with handoffs between sales and marketing, all of the rules that we never built, the engagements between those two functions that weren't perfect, they multiplied, I think, under our nose. On the other hand, we work with buyers, right? And Meg, you and I are overly familiar, and maybe other folks are well, with the age of the customer. And I say that was a Forrester term that they said for the next 20 years, about 20 years ago, the thing about customers is they know more than us. They're more informed than we are. They've got access to things like the internet, that they didn't have before, right? Pricing, G2 Crowd, other folks that have the experience that simply talk to each other and share more. And it put them in a position where we're catching up with them because they have more information. And I would submit that we're also catching up to them because they know exactly what they want. Their procurement, their legal, their buyers, their users. Not to say it's perfect in organizations, but they know they want the best terms, best pricing, the most flexibility. Again, at the most affordable rate with the most generous terms, et cetera. And they've got a bunch of people involved, again, legal, procurement, to make sure that happens, right? To make sure that it's not a quick decision by one person. So there's this alignment there. And I don't think that relationship between buyer and seller is versus. I don't think that's a healthy way to look at it. But we do have to say, how capable are we as a go-to-market function to interact with such an aligned entity as these mature customers that really have had the conversations, figured out their specs, know where they'll compromise and where they won't, and are so well able because of who they involve in the buying team, and again, because of the expertise they have, and because of the fact that they can largely walk away. It's tremendous power. And when we think that we might be getting in our own way, which is how I've heard it described in so many words, gosh, we're in trouble and we need to find our way out of that.
You make a great point about so many great points in there. What I'm kind of taking away is without alignment, you can't really scale particularly well your revenue function, or you're going to have a lot of friction. It's kind of the same conversation, like you said, that we've been having for a couple decades, but it sounds like it's like mushrooming in terms of the pain point. I guess that leads me to my question of when you're talking with clients about this, how do you get them to admit that there's a pain point there, and then what steps do you take to kind of begin that journey?
Totally. So there was one really good story, and I am cheating here. I'm looking at a document I have, where this became really clear. That there was a customer that we worked with, and pipeline was good. Win rates and sales cycles slipped. So what had once taken a deal profile that maybe once took 90 days took about 120 days. And that they knew, right? This was on paper, this is what the system said, used to be 90 and now it's 120. So we have a isolated issue that's been diagnosed. Great. Top of funnel still looks healthy. What's happening here? And what we did, and we did this in collaboration with the company, we recommended that they look at call notes, right? What is kind of happening in call notes? There's a lot of places to look here. I looked under a couple of rocks, but call notes is ultimately where we found some answers. And I had been thinking about alignment, and I thought that this really closed the case for me in terms of what a core issue it is. So here are some of the things that we found in the call notes that I thought are so indicative that really told the story without me having to tell it, right? So we saw a lot of this. This is across about 20 deals. We're waiting for evidence of a security certification. Right? That's a salesperson saying in a deal, we're waiting for a case study on a recently released feature. We just don't have anything yet. We're waiting for a reference that can speak to a large finance company who's done something like this before. Prospect requested documentation on disaster recovery. Waiting for approval on customized pricing. You don't need me to go on. There's just one more. Product demos emphasized an advanced feature, and we now have to deal with that. Doesn't all of that sound so familiar? These are 20 deals. This wasn't all in one deal. Of course, there was an advanced feature emphasized that wasn't included in the pricing. That was a mess that someone kicked down the road. Why? Person who is responsible for giving the demo has to give the best damn demo they can. That's what we're asking of them. That's what they should do, right? Outside of a conversation that says, hey, there's risk here, let's mitigate it by being aligned. Nobody loves that conversation because we're saying hold back our best stuff, but it's a mess that we're kicking down the road. Who's waiting for security certification? That is an organization in which either it doesn't exist. I mean, I just don't know. That could be a problem. They're developing it. They're under the certification. We don't have all the information, but we do know that this was an inevitable question from the customer type, the ICP of this particular company. And so some of it, John, to answer your question more directly, the evidence is in there, right? The evidence of, doesn't this look like you're in your own way? Does this look like an organization that is saying we should rally to get people to write checks? Or does this look like an organization that's sort of optimizing locally? And I wouldn't ever describe this organization as particularly unique. As I read that list, John, your face, and Megan, your face was a little bit like, yep, that happens. And I think this is, not so much basic, but these are solvable issues, right? And but it is true, John. It's not always easy to say, hey, the issue is, it's not that the market is cautious. That's happening, right? It's not that that's happening, but your buyers are far along in this process that they talked to their procurement team. They had questions, and you fell apart.
Allison, you're reminding me of a study we did at Serious Decisions a long time ago, but it sounds like the outcome is still something for people to be mindful of, which is we looked at the factors that led to companies outperforming their peers in the market. And, there are a few things about the market in general, sort of the rising tide lifts all boats or doesn't. There's a little bit to do with product innovation and competitiveness, but the last sort of 15 to 20% of overperformance was entirely related to internal efficiency and alignment. And I thought, it's kind of something that you just said out of that. All of these things are within a company's own power to fix. So often we want to throw up our hands and say, oh my gosh, the market's terrible, or customers are difficult, or whatever it is. But all the things you just listed off were things that the company could fix and had nothing to do with market conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a lesson right there to say, when you are doing analysis of your pipeline, when you are looking at where you are stalling or slowing, or things are falling out, and, like you said, linking it back to what's on the notes or the call recordings or other things, are these things that we are doing to ourselves, or are these things that are coming from the outside? And that distinction right there can be incredibly instructive. And maybe it's a mix, but I think not doing the homework, like you were just talking about, is not a good thing. I'm curious to get your take. We've got kind of a new player that's coming into buying journeys, and a newer player. I shouldn't say it's not new per se. And of course, it's AI. And we always end up talking about AI one way or the other these days. But in this case, I think one of the observations I've read recently is that AI is actually the one putting up some of these hurdles, things like requiring security certificates and different kinds of steps in the buying process. When AI is involved, what changes or what gets harder about addressing alignment needs and alignment debt?
Totally. So I think AI is on two sides, and you mentioned it's new, and I'll accept that. I know a lot of people would say, "Oh, come on," but AI as a buyer, I think is still new to many of us. I'm not. There's no shame in my game. That's how I feel. AI on the GTM side, I'll start with. I'm observing that folks are really aggressive, appropriately so. I'm such a champion of it. Don't want to sound like you should slow down. Go ahead and absorb the tools. Have your employees experiment. Have a vision. Encourage the use of the inevitable and fabulous, wonderful opportunities that AI gives us. Keep in mind that when one element of our system moves faster than the rest, there are consequences. I'm going to go back to 2016 for a moment, if you guys will allow me. And I talked a lot about predictive analytics to buyers. And as you know, Meg, from your Serious Decisions days, people would come to us and say, hey, which one of these should I buy? I'm going to start there. It wasn't, should I buy this? A lot of it was, hey, I'm looking at A and B. And no secret, a lot of times that was demand-based versus Sixth Sense. So there's no sense in not saying it. 2016, those companies are still around, go for them. And I would ask questions like, hey, what if you find buyers in market? What are you going to do with them? Right? Let's just talk about how you will employ this awesome information. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy it. I'm simply saying, what's the plan for making good use of this investment? And a lot of times it was, well, we'll sort that out, right? And I'm guilty of this too. I don't mean to point to the market and say, gosh, people can't handle technology. That's not true. But there are exciting technologies. And the easy thing is I'm going to find the people in market. Right, and that's going to check a really big box for me. I'll send them to sales, put them in campaigns. Maybe I'll put them in the same set of campaigns I have. I don't know. Right now, I think the equivalent of that is I can produce a whole lot of things a whole lot faster. And I think that that's awesome. But we're not just dealing, right, with things. So another very quick story. When I was very young, I put together a account plan best I could as something like a 23-year-old in a very big billion-dollar consulting company, or just my first job. It was about Toyota. That was the company that we were targeting. It probably took me 3 or 4 weeks to build who are competitors, where are we installed in Toyota right now, who likes us, who doesn't, where can we expand, geographical-wise, department-wise. The point is, binder. I am so proud of myself, Meg and John. It is a beautiful binder. It had a beautiful cover. Now, I remember sneaking around cubicles and thinking, they're going to read it, right? I mean, this is like a beautiful Stephen King book. This is compelling stuff. Everybody's going to read it. You and I, John, Meg, everybody on the call, people didn't read it and consume it that way because it was an artifact. It wasn't embedded into workflows. It wasn't shared knowledge. It wasn't transferred knowledge. It didn't count in the moment. Someone might refer to it for a specific thing, but that's how it works. So if I could create that same binder in 10 minutes, which I can, and not only that, but maintain it, right? Because that's out of date in 10 days. And so now, what a glorious thing. It exists, we can maintain it. I still need to do the hard work, and maybe I can do this. I'm not saying this is where AI stops and we begin. This is all good, but just give thought to the other side of that. Whatever you produce is still embedded knowledge, embedded workflow. What does it matter? Where does it count? What kind of customers care? What does it mean for what I should say during a demo? What is this? Who cares about this, right? That's a translation we have to do, because what I learned back then at 23 is because I have time to make this artifact doesn't mean that that sales has time to consume it. And that's true for every intersection of every function. So I worry that AI as a seller, it should be helping us make customers happy. But if we can work with customers faster and we still fall down when we're asked for things that perhaps we should have expected, when we're asked for things like proof, evidence, who else has done this, the basics of modern buying, that yes, an AI agent will ask for as well. It will be the checklist that they are deployed to fulfill. So I am very violently, so to take a Johnism, very pro, you use this where it's effective, but please continue to look at the other side of that, the long tail of that action, and think through how effective it is for the outcomes that really count. Because it's never going to be volume of articles published. It's never going to be how fast did you make the competitive report. It's going to be, did we close business?
Yeah, that's a great point, and so much to unpack there. I loved how you talked about the workflow element, because if you're not in the workflow of a sales team in particular, SDR or sellers, I've learned this the hard way over the last 10 years of my consultancy, is you've got to be in that workflow or you're persona non grata. So I love how you bring that out. And thinking about AI, and you've been, we didn't get time to talk about this prior, but I've noticed that you've been hosting a few very prominent AI conversations related to GTM. Of course, I can't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but I know they've been very prominent because I've seen it. And then prior to that, I just came off another call where I was talking about Claude Cowork, which Meg helped me prepare for that conversation. I'm so grateful for that. We talked a lot about kind of AI and GTM. Is there a way that AI could close the gap of the alignment versus accelerating the misalignment?
Mm-hmm.
So it could AI be pointed inward somehow to reduce that friction, or are you seeing anybody do that today? Is it too early, or are they all looking at it on the external side to focus on, the AI bot for prospecting as an example?
Such a good question, and I don't know that I have all the answers, but let me offer what I'm thinking, and you guys may have thoughts on it as well. We will save time with AI, which is brilliant. We will be able to produce faster. If we're talking about something like a competitive report, it might just be that it took us weeks in the past, and we therefore neglected the time it took to educate folks on what it said. It may be that we neglected the time it took to embed it in workflows. It may be that we neglected to say, look, I put together a 4-page competitive report, but I just did a Loom that summarizes it, and you can consume it in 2 minutes, right? And if you want more, here's where it is. I think that the tools that we can use to summarize are really smart, right? The full document is here. We've got it in your sales system if you want it. But I did go ahead and create a Loom that was really easy for me. It would have, possibly would have taken me how many hours before, but now it's going to take me just a few minutes to go ahead and spin up a version of that is far more consumable, or at least gives you a taste of what's there if you decide to look at it. It's still not quite workflow, John, but it's a little something that says, I have reclaimed time to translate the work that I did to be consumable by the person who needs to consume it. I know that there are opportunities for AI agents and other elements to build things into workflow, to automate a demo script, I just find that even when I provided a new demo script without taking sort of a half an hour to give sort of an open house to some SDRs to say, hey, we revised the demo script. Here's why it's important. It's based on, G2 crowd saying this, people saying you showed an advanced feature and that caused them problems up the road, or client experience saying, gosh, I was told that this would work this way. So we're tweaking things. Or this feature overwhelmed me. Why didn't anybody show me this before I became a client? Whatever all of that becomes, that there's some explanation to why things have changed, and that helps people move toward it. I think we can embed things in workflow easier. What I have seen mostly at this point in time in my customers' maturity is they are reclaiming time just from the production of an asset to say, what do we do now to make the asset eminently more effective? And can we expand the channels through which we distribute it in an automated fashion? Can we test it faster, et cetera? And in some cases, simply doing the manual work of saying, I will translate this for the audiences that matter, and maybe using some AI tools to do that. So I hope that's helpful. I don't think it's the most mature answer someone would have. Someone out there is thinking a whole lot more about this. I hope it
Well, I
helps.
think it's also a situation where you've got, quite a lot of you've got a range of maturity when it
Yeah.
comes to AI deployment. Some people are years ahead and other people are just getting started, and we're going to see that for the foreseeable future. So I think it's good advice, sort of thinking, and sometimes the basic things aren't so basic, or aren't done. And it actually exacerbates your alignment debt. So I think what I'd love to hear is, for the companies that you're advising, who you want to be able to take the time to identify where they have alignment debt, where they've got a mismatch with what their buyers are expecting and what they're delivering. What's your kind of top 5 checklist of things that you would say they should go do to address, to first of all diagnose, but then maybe second of all to start to handle some of the typical things you see for alignment debt?
Yes, there are, I'm gonna try to get to 5. There are 4 that come to mind instantly, and then we'll challenge me for a 5th. One of the things that I would do as a consultant that I always encourage people to just do by themselves if they can, right? They don't need me to do this. Is go ahead, get a group of people who you need to be aligned. I think this comes from product marketing, post-sale, customer experience, accounts, revenue ops, if that exists, certainly the product team. Go ahead and get your group together. Perhaps it happens at a kickoff, and have everyone write down. I used to do this at Forrester quite a bit. What does this company do? Just observe how different your answers are. Observe how many people go to the website and say, "Oh, we do this," right? This is essentially how we communicate what we do, regardless of what I say in sales calls. And think through that, but do that exercise and see what it shows you. Who do we sell to is another question. I just want folks to write down who we sell to and see if we're aligned across. A lot of times what I hear is, oh, we have an ICP. John, do you know where the ICP doc is? Is it on the Google Drive? Did we move? Where is it? So I also encourage people to say, and this is my absolute favorite exercise, and I'm building this out on the Substack. Take a group and go to market. This happens a lot between product and product marketing. This is where we see this more so than marketing and sales. Write down how you generously give to that function. What do you give them? As a product marketer, are you making celebrities out of your product team, right? Whatever that might look like in better language than that, but what are you doing? And the product side, what do you need from product marketing? What are you getting from product marketing? It's just a two-way, the intersection of just 2 at a time to say, what do you need here? And evaluate, are you getting it, right? Talk to the other person, the other leader, the other team. We need a product roadmap that is generally solid every 3 months with some level of feature detail that team can define. And product might say that's simply not how we work. Well, you have to work through that before it's time for a release. And product marketing has gotten some feature thrown over the wall that, and people are saying, bring this to market right now. This is amazing. We've actually been showing it in demos for 2 months, and we're behind and put on the website. And all of a sudden you're just taking sort of products, right? What time do you have to do more work? The point is, there's benefit for everybody to kind of share those things sooner. At the same time, product is going to tell you there are a ton of ways that you let me down. So just uncover those and have an honest conversation. you will address every one of those points when it's time for a product launch. It's going to feel almost academic to do it now. It might not feel like it's the urgency thing on fire that everyone has, but it will uncover not only what do we need, but what kind of format and quality do we need it in, right? And it's okay even to say that's a gap. It's just a recognized gap is better than a gap that nobody sees coming. So those are I think that was 3. I don't know if I hit your 5, Meg, but those are kind of some of the exercises that I either run or ask folks to run, without me in the room, which is perfectly good way to do it.
Just noticed time here. Maybe a quick last question, and thinking about, I mean, you mentioned so much there with the ICP, and what I'm kind of getting as a common theme here is the fundamentals are missing or need shoring up in parallel to companies' appetite to onboard AI. Like they really have that strong appetite, but the foundation is not in place. And something as simple as the ICP, not simple, but fundamental as an ICP,
fundamental. Yeah,
if that's missing, you're just gonna scale stuff in a bad way. You're gonna scale
totally.
chaos.
Totally. Even, I mean, we've done a lot of prompting, right? Everybody on this call and for everybody who's joining us, if you can prompt to create any asset with a good description of the audience, your output will be so much better. So even if we just started there and said, hey, for the sake of AI, define who you are selling to, it's got all sorts of power. And obviously, man, UC pipelines really suffer from let's just see who'll write us a check, right? Let's just give it a good shot. It's no way to run a mature business. So yeah, things like ICP. And again, I'll say a lot of times, I think people really feel like they have them. They just can't speak to them. They don't necessarily know where the doc is. It's not embedded culture. It's just, yeah, we did the work. We did that exercise, right? That was a moment in time, and I can access it whenever I want. It's on a common drive. But it doesn't necessarily inform every decision that I make every single day when it comes to campaigns and outreach and building lists and ABM and all of that fun stuff.
It's in the work. It's not in the workflow. It's an artifact, like you were saying earlier. So, I just find myself shaking my head up and down this entire conversation. So I don't know if I have a last question. Meg, you may have a last question.
Well, I hope, Allison, I'd love for you to come back and we should talk more about ICPs and defining ICPs and confirming ICPs, because I think that's at the heart of so much, whether it's AI or ABM or, alignment. It's, agreeing on who you sell to. Wow. Like it seems like it should be basic, but again, not so basic. And something that I think a lot of people need help with. So I'd love to invite you back to have that conversation in the months ahead, if you'd be willing.
I'm in.
All right. Well, and Allison, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm really glad we were able to bring this idea of alignment debt forward. I think it's something I would love to see companies really think about, marketing leaders, sales leaders, product leaders, because I think it will make a huge difference. So thank you for raising the topic and for sharing with us some really good suggestions for how to address it.
Such a pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
Excellent, Allison. Thank you for joining us. We're going to send you some warm weather to both of you from Nashville. I won't tell you it's 66 today, because I know you're swimming in 2 feet of snow there, but it'll melt. It'll eventually melt. I've been there. I can shovel snow.
We'll have a summer again. They always show up.
It has to be eventually. All right, guys. Well, from this last day of meteorological winter, thank you again for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing everybody again next time. And for now, goodbye and happy Friday.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Take care.